Hello, my name is Antonia and this is Noel, and we are from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company and we are here in our studio. We thought we would talk to you a little bit about the new set that we have designed for the Picture of Dorian Gray, which is, as we mentioned in the puppet making vlog, a show that we made a little while ago now, and I can't actually remember what year it was. I feel like maybe 2017?
Yeah, I
it
think
was
that's about
2017.
right, yeah.
And we're going to be taking it out on tour again next spring. And so we just gave the puppets a refresh, and we've also given the set a little refresh as well.
Yeah, so in the same way as we were saying about the puppets, where we wanted to bring things up to date in a way that feels like the show has developed as the company has developed, and that things kind of benefit from from all the things that we've learned basically along the way. So while that applies to the puppets and how we make them and what we've done with them, obviously it also applies to the set. The original set for Dorian Gray was quite kind of cool, you know. We were really pleased with the idea at the time because we struggled with it quite a lot, trying to think of what not something that wasn't too literal, but also that represented a space that the story could take place in.
Yes, because there's quite a few different locations within the story, but they're all most of them are interior. There's a few exterior ones as well, but they're different people's houses and things like that. And we didn't want to have to, as you'll know if you've ever watched any of our shows, we don't ever do great big set shifts. So it's about having something that's versatile.
And that still hints at the kind of feel of the vague feel of the period and the sense of the space that they're inhabiting. So when we landed on this idea for the gallery and found a way to put the puppets in the frames, we were really pleased with how that looked and how that worked. And we were also really pleased with the idea that it meant we could then play with the idea of having Dorian in the frame or behind the frame, and that these frames kind of gradually got emptied as well as the story progressed.
Yeah, absolutely. We also knew what space we were designing for, in the sense that it had been commissioned by the Clark Memorial Library, who we've spoken about a lot because they also commissioned Gulliver's Travels. And we knew that they'd sent us a picture of the room that we were going to be performing in. And so there was definitely an element of the design that was based around how it would look in that room.
Yes.
We do have a photo, I think, of it from there, and you can see how well it went within that space. We needed to pack it on the plane.
Yes,
it was not the first time we'd taken a show on a plane.
No.
Northanger was the first one we took.
But it's always a consideration, is packing and how are you going to travel with it. And while we were pleased with it at the time, and I think, at the time it did represent a development from what we'd done.
Yep.
You always want to be continuing to develop and continuing to improve on what you've done before. And it looked smart, but the frames were very, very simple. They were very, very plain. The stands that we were using were a little bit mismatched. I don't know that we would necessarily have made that choice now. No. That was a question of practicality rather than aesthetics, really, at the time. So we decided that we wanted to just revisit the set a little. Now, you have to be careful because we don't want to lose the central idea, and we don't want to kind of over-egg the pudding or overwork the painting or take it a step too far. So we played around with, first of all, what we could do to update the frames and to make them look smarter, to make them look a little bit better. And then what else we could potentially add just to give it a little extra something, and also to make it feel like a slightly bigger show. Yeah. Because the scale of the venues that we're playing has also increased, we wanted it to feel like it could fill those bigger stages.
We went through a few different options. We decided to sort of allow ourselves the freedom to draw whatever we could think of, and we did go off topic, as it were, didn't we? Against we knew we wanted to keep the frames, but there were definitely things where we were drawing, I don't know, shelving and stuff that we could use, or
it's always best to give yourself that freedom.
Columns, I think you had at one point.
Yeah, columns, and I had plants in vases and.
I mean, you laugh, but actually some of the things that you'd come up with that they would do were really interesting.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we said to each other was that with the later shows that we've made, there has been a lot of the physical items that we have in the set transforming in their own way to create the different locations within the story. And we didn't want to lose that. We had a little bit of that with the original Dorian set, but that was really about just moving those smaller frames forward. So that's why we, when you were looking at columns, you were thinking, well, if we put half the column together like that and put something on top, then that
or if
might
sections
mean
could
something.
slide out of them,
Yeah,
that would be
exactly.
cool,
So that was where those ideas came from. And in the end, I think we sort of both realised that actually the frames were the key to the design in the first place, so that really we actually wanted to stick within that framework.
Excuse me.
It's just choking at my
Hopefully
bad
I just
joke.
muted that microphone as well so I didn't cough straight in the microphone.
Anyway, we wanted to stay within that. So we decided to make a giant frame at the front that would be split into two halves, one on one side, one on the other. At the sort of they start downstage of the other ones that sit at the back, and that they then could be brought in together in some way and configured in different ways around the stage to represent the different places we went. We went one step further then and also decided that we wanted them to be able to rotate slightly. That is still something which we think is going to work. One of them, as always with these things, one of them works better than the other. We think it'll work. If it turns out that the rotation just adds time and clunkiness to the transitions, then we won't use it.
As ever, those sort of things are really difficult when you're making a touring show that has to pack down. If we could make something that was going to play in a space for a long time, a piece of cake, the way of doing that is relatively straightforward. But when you've got to make something that also disassembles, is very lightweight and comes apart and then packs down easily for touring, you're introducing a whole range of potential weaknesses and points where you might have trouble with the weight if you're turning these things.
Yeah, so although the idea is sound, and we've got some images of the set model that we built where you can see how we were imagining we might turn them, and they do make some really cool shapes.
They do, so fingers crossed it will work. One of them, like you say, works pretty smoothly. The other one,
it might be a question of judicious use of the turning mechanism, so that we don't, because you always want to make sure that you don't kind of annoy your audience by, I don't know, clunkily sort of. I can't remember. Our director Adam Lenson has quite a good phrase for it. I feel
think
like
he usually just says, "I'm bored now.
Yeah.
Bored of watching you move scenery."
Struggle to move that, or he sort of. I think he said, we've tried their patience too far as an audience, So we very much want to make sure that we don't do that. But nonetheless, we are actually pretty pleased with how they've turned out, and I think there's certainly going to be a nice impressive thing that will fill the front of the stage and give a bit of height.
Even if they don't turn, even if they're just static and we can change the angle
they're
on
nice
them.
and lightweight, aren't they? So they're easy to pick up and put down. So we can certainly move them around.
And they can make some brilliant pictures when we've also increased the size of the central frame for Dorian himself or herself. Themself. I say that because we've had male and female actors playing the role. We've increased the size of that frame quite considerably. We had issues with the one that we'd made originally. We always had slight troubles with it because it always seemed a little bit too small, and it also causes a few lighting issues where, depending on where the lighting is, it casts a shadow on the performer's face. So that looks a lot better. That's a lot bigger, but also it works really nicely then if you line those frames up.
It's like a sort of tunnel of
frames.
Yeah,
we can make some lovely shapes with them, lovely images.
And that doesn't involve having to twist them. So, we'll see how we get on with that. But we're pretty pleased, really. We've now got them to the stage where they've all had they've had their painting done. There might be a little bit of tweaking with that here and there, but they are pretty much ready. There's a lot of magnets, as always.
Loads of magnets, yeah. They've been made out of as much of the remaining reclaimed foam board as we haven't bought.
The only thing new we've bought for the set is the magnets. Everything else is stuff that we had offcuts from other stuff. So that's always nice to be able to do that as well. But yeah, so we're pretty happy, really, and we will now have to just sort of leave that to one side until later in the year when we'll come back to it, I think.
Yes.
But at least we've got a nice jump on it. Which we just wanted to do.
It's in a good place, isn't it? It feels like it's looking very smart. Yes, and we have to leave it now because we are, in fact, just about to leave for Shanghai, where we'll be performing The Wind in the Willows for a couple of weeks.
Yes, so we're headed there on Monday. So So we'll no doubt let you know how we get on there. And in the meantime, if you are still enjoying our vlogs, please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment, ask any questions you would like, and we'll see you again soon.